Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Does anybody need sugar? Or does anybody want to dance? Yeah, see? Lauren's dancing. So normally, I'd ask a question around cryptocurrency. I'm supposed to be doing CBDC, but just as a show of hands, who owns Bitcoin? Yay! Who owns XRP? The rest of you are not doing very well, Anyway, let's not go through the cryptocurrencies. Thank you for joining the session. We're going to talk about CBDCs, and with my two guests who've traveled a long way from Tokyo, Japan, and from India as well. So really exciting discussion we've got ahead. Start off with, does anybody know what a CBDC is? Not you two. You're not allowed to answer this one. Does everyone know what a CBDC is? Central bank digital currency. So basically, it's a digital version of the pound, the dollar, the euro, the yen, the rupee, etc. Many different flavors of it, many different ways it sort of works and happens. Sorry, I forgot to say, so I'm Antony. I'm Senior Advisor for CBDCs at Ripple as well, so I'm speaking from the Ripple perspective. What we're doing at Ripple is actually quite interesting. We've spent probably about 2 years now, we've been working on CBDCs. So it's a lot longer than most people think. It feels like a lifetime. I've only done it for a year, and it's amazing how much this has taken off over the last sort of 12 months. And we've got some great examples to discuss in a second. What we're doing at Ripple is we take a version of the XRP ledger and we've made it a private ledger. No central bank at this stage would operate with a public ledger for many different reasons. Eventually they may do. Let's see what happens there. So this CBDC ledger, we then add to it a CBDC manager, which allows you to mint, issue, destroy, do what you need to with your currency. So it allows the central bank or any other sort of institution to issue currency and put it out into the system and start to use it. We have two projects that we've announced at the moment, and they're different ends of the scale, and I think it's quite important. When we talk about a digital currency, we're talking about the whole system of money from bartering and exchanging gold through to paper money, which most people probably still have a little bit in their pockets, through to electronic money. Okay, so what you have in your bank account today that shows on your phone is electronic money, it's not digital money. Then we've got digital currencies. And the way we look at them as Ripple is 3 types or flavors, but it's a scale. So a digital currency like XRP or Bitcoin or Ethereum, etc., so a native cryptocurrency, all the way through to the CBDC, backed by a central bank, monetary policy, very important to our world, because if in each country that goes, the wrong way, and you have issues in a country. In the middle, you've got stable coins, and we loosely we can spend years talking about this, but very quickly, we've got regulated stable coins. There are no real regulations, but they're like a CBDC, and then we've got the non-regulated, which are like cryptos. So that's what we look at. With Bhutan is next to India and Nepal. It's a sovereign nation with their own currency, and we're building a CBDC with them. So we're a year and probably 18 months maybe, a year to 18 months in process with them. We're on phase 3 of the project. There'll be some announcements over the next few weeks around where we are with them and what's happening. But it's all around getting a CBDC to operate in the country. Importantly, one of the reasons why Bhutan chose Ripple is because we use XRP Ledger, which is sustainable and is carbon neutral to carbon positive. It's a very important part for that country. And then on the other side, we have Palau. Palau is an island nation, and Palau is a US dollar, a dollarized country, which means they use the dollar in everything they do, but they're not, they're not part of the US, they're not one of the states, etc. What we're building for them is a stable coin, a stable US dollar coin, which is backed by the bank. So they don't have a central bank in Palau. That's why they don't have their own currency, etc. But they have a finance ministry and they have, call it affiliations with American banks. So basically, one of the big American banks would be the backstop for this stablecoin. So it is the same as a US dollar in all intents and purposes, because obviously that American bank is backstopped by the Federal Reserve and the bank there. So we've got two really interesting projects that are live and lots of discussions happening. I think the last 12 months, the amount of discussions around CBDCs has just exponentially grown. And so for me, CBDCs are 100% going to happen. Don't ask me when, because that's the last question that we're going to ask the panel. So on that, I'm going to hand over to RK to do a quick introduction of yourself, and then answer the first question of what's the status of CBDCs in your world?
Yeah, nice to be in the UBRI in the physical mode. And so I am from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, attached to the Computer Science and Engineering. We also have the Ripple blockchain research and also validator. And of late, even recently, we voted for the protocol changes. And as you know, yesterday, we had a lot of talk about the trust. And then recently, one of our industry alumnus also instituted a trust lab to see how would be the trust. And then we have the cybersecurity. And these are the things around which many of the activities around these distributed systems and so on and so forth take place. The center is across all the departments. And the IIT Bombay is one of the largest, and then the largest institutes in Indian context, having about 12,000 students, of which about 3,000 are PhD students, wow. A kind of a thing or the other. And so coming to the status of a CBDC, in my opinion, in some sense, India, in the last budget, they announced they would like to have a CBDC by the end of the year. But I'm not sure. There are some discussions, but I'm not sure because there are lots of issues taking into account kind of a thing or the other, like in the policy, like whether it should be a complementary to cash and bank money. So because banks are also interested, because if they lose the bank deposit, then the government will lose control, and so on and so forth are the other. And then the most important thing is the financial inclusion. In fact, India, under our Prime Minister Modi, started a bank account for all those who didn't have a bank account. So unlike perhaps in the US, I understood there are nearly 20 million people who don't have a bank account. But in India, most of them have, but whether they are using, that's a different question, what one has to understand kind of a thing or the other. And the other one is overcoming the money laundering kind of a thing. And the financial inclusion, one of the reasons is to promote local market, particularly in the rural areas, because then the liquidity becomes much, much easier kind of a thing. This is one of the major aims of the Indian CBDC, a kind of a thing. And of course, one cannot lose out monetary sovereignty, as he was telling. In another country, you have a US dollar, and now the question is that where one will move into kind of a thing or the other. And these are the prime aspects, even though we have thing like India introduced the UPI payment systems kind of a thing, of which has been now adopted both in Nepal and Sri Lanka. But still, this becomes a very important thing because banking transactions are not so easy in the Indian context.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Kenichi.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm very glad to be here also in this conference. And my name is Kenichi Uedi. I'm teaching at the University of Tokyo now around 7-8 years. And before that, I had like more than 10 years experience at the International Monetary Fund at Washington, D.C. And I'm on the econ finance professor. And I don't know much about tech, but I do know that all the theories and the empirical studies on central banking and also banking, private sector banking, and security market, those things. So I would say central bank digital currency, CBDC, replacing 4 old technologies, I would say. One is clearance and settlement among across banks, which currently done by old kind of account-based setup, especially the settlement usually done by central bank. Those could be replaced by the blockchain technology. We could call wholesale CBDC.
Yep.
And the second technology is a paper money. You know, have a US dollar bill or a pound bill or a Japanese yen bill. Those paper money could be replaced by central bank digital currencies, which we call retail CBDC. However, third one is, as Antony said, third one is a bank deposit. You know that why bank deposit? Because a bank deposit has been used to, just parking our money, and every time you go, you wanna withdraw money from an ATM machine, you can do it very quickly. And also, bank deposit has been used to pay bills online, right? Electronic money sense. So that for economics profession, as well as any central bank, counts bank deposit as a money, actually. So the money is not just the paper money, but the paper money plus bank deposit is actually our definition, economics definition of the money. And then in Japan, for example, 90% of the money is in the form of bank deposits. Only 10% is paper money. Okay? And relatively less so in US and EU, but it's more like the same in many advanced countries. So that if the CBDC is introduced, retail CBDC is introduced, a very strict form. Strict form means each one of you will have a smartphone application or something linked and having an account at the Bank of Japan or Bank of England or Federal Reserve banks, New York, for example, then it's easy to see, kind of predict that many people maybe just switch to your Citibank or RBS account or Mitsubishi Bank accounts to the central bank accounts, right? Then obviously banking business would be gone. And especially think about 12, 13 years ago, 2008, 2009, where Lehman Brothers collapsed, Northern Rock collapsed here. Those times, if the central bank offer you, each one of you can have an account at central bank, I believe many of you have done so, switching withdraw all the money from Bank of America, Citibank to switch to Federal Reserve Board system, right? Then that's really killing banking system. Obviously, banks not just taking deposit but lend money, but the central bank, well, someone you could say, then the central bank should just also lend money to the company. But if they do so, we call Soviet Union style. Central bank get all the money and lend all the money to. We know that didn't work already. So we don't. So at least advanced country, it's not really good idea to killing those bank business. So there's some discussion going on, and either very restricting CBDC on the amount, or just maybe a stable coin backed by the bank deposits enough. Because anyway, the current banks, those who got the bank licenses, have a reserve account in the central bank, a central bank kind of backing the commercial bank's bank account, right? Bank deposit account, as well as together with deposit insurance companies, corporations everywhere. So that stable coin backed by the commercial bank deposits may be enough for the advanced countries. That's, I think, the situation. Then the other issue is international aspect coming in. So that currently, as you know, the SWIFT discussion yesterday, so there's a transaction settlement and clearance going on also international scale. That is traditionally through the SWIFT at the Belgian headquartered in Belgium, and then it's as we know now, almost all the international transactions up to 95% is in US dollar. So that can be changing, actually already changing because of because it's economic sanction against Russia, so that some countries that is not really good, not necessarily ally with US, EU, or Japan, wanna maybe use alternative measures of transaction, which, however, for example, China already started 2015 their own SWIFT system called SIPS. That together with, for example, China also developing CBDC for the currently experimenting, and also China has a private company called Alipay, WeChat Pay, everywhere in Asia, including Japan, many East Asian countries, you could use, at least the Chinese people can use it.
Yep.
And then those Alipay is a private company, but it's currently, we know, heavily controlled by the government too, the Chinese government. So that many fears, especially Asian developing countries fears, maybe those Chinese currency system, if the coming in 5-10 years, that's also some fear coming out. So that for those, especially small developing countries, place where they are kind of threatened by maybe Chinese yuan or maybe US dollar, we don't know, threatened by those international stable coins or CBDCs, have indeed incentive to develop their own, they try to keep their own currency system in these small. And I think that's kind of parallel Bhutan case. And I myself teamed up with my former students from Cambodia, currently teaching at the University in Cambodia, because Cambodia is one of the first country, together with Bahama, introduced already CBDC in their country, in a retail CBDC in their country in October 2020. And we just got the survey result last week and can share with something here, I hope, today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's brilliant. And I think one of the things that sort of Kenichi brings out is this is actually a lot more complex than you think. Yeah. Well, than I thought anyway. I used to think it's quite easy because I go to the cash machine and I withdraw some pounds and then I pay someone with this. And it all seems very simple. And then you've got the crypto world where technically you could do that with XRP. As long as everybody accepts XRP, then why do we need to use the pound or the dollar and things? They're sort of either ends of the scale, and we've got to change to whichever system and whichever process. And part of the theme yesterday was we don't know the answers yet. We're still working through. And I think some of what we've seen so far is that we're still trying to work out. CBDCs is the central bank money, the central bank currency, so it's perceived as the safest in your country and the rest of it. Therefore, there's a perception that people would want to have that instead of HSBC, Barclays, Bank of America, etc., even though they're backed by the central bank. That brings us to the discussion around privacy, which is the most important discussion around, well, there's actually many important discussions at this stage, but I think for citizens, for people, you've got to think about your privacy. Today, if I, withdraw 100 euros or pounds and give it to Paolo, nobody knows. Well, I've just told everyone, but anyway, nobody would know that. And if I walk around with a suitcase and manage to get it through the airport and take it to RK in Bombay, then we'd be all right, So, the biggest laundered currency in the world is the physical US dollar. And, it always will be for a long time, and maybe forever. But privacy with cash there is privacy, there's total privacy, give or take. When you're doing your bank transaction, though, there isn't. So if I send, I think in the UK and EU, it's over 10,000 euros or dollars, you literally have to go to your bank and give them blood and tell them why you're doing it and beg them to pay, which I find amazing because, I bought a car recently and to pay the deposit, I had to go to my branch. I was like, it's my money and it's my car and I have a contract. Why do I have to come and talk to you? But anyway, that's a different. So we don't live in a world where we have privacy. We only have privacy with cash and you're not allowed to use much of it. India, you don't have 100 rupee notes, wasn't it?
We have 100.
Yeah, there was a level of
1,000 was removed.
Yeah, so they took out, was it 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah.
They took out the high levels of notes, and it was quite a big issue. So when you think about privacy, just remember, and I'm holding my phone for a reason, there's companies in this phone, one Apple, one Google, and my mobile phone companies, and I've got 2 SIM cards. They know everything that I'm doing. So I just want to put that in context of when people say CBDCs, the banks can see everything. I'd question, does the governor of the Bank of England really care that you bought a coffee this morning? I'm not sure he would. You know, he may be interested in if you're moving $5 million, but you probably wouldn't be doing it in that sort of way. You know, there's ways to do money transfers. So I think, for me, privacy is very important for the people to understand, but I don't think it's as big an issue as some of the other areas of how we're going to do the banking system, how we're going to change, and some of the areas that Kenichi talked about. So in terms of privacy, what's your thinking around privacy in CBDC?
Yeah, you mentioned the demonetization in India. There was a recent over-the-tea table talk where Dr. Ghuram Rajan, who was the then Reserve Bank governor, during which time the demonetization took place, he claimed that not all money that was to come has not come back. What if the next government comes and says those money is legal?
Yes. Yeah,
So suppose it was in CBDC, perhaps one could have wiped it out, kind of a thing or the other. So these are all very big reasons to think what is the way the technology to be used, kind of a framework. Privacy is a very important aspect if it has to be accepted, particularly in a democratic society. Otherwise, I think it becomes impossible.
Yes.
But in India, there is a small section for financial inclusion. They don't care for privacy because they want liquidity, quickness, and all that kind of a thing. And also another important aspect, lots of disaster happen in the Indian context due to floods, rains, and so on and so forth. Now, I want this CBDC to happen in an offline mode. I don't care for privacy and all that kind of a thing or the other. But the most important thing, government wants to overcome privacy is the money laundering.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons of demonetization was how to avoid black marketing as well as terrorist funding, kind of a thing or the other. Just like we had the digital cash offline and online, can I have a hierarchy in which people, if they are doing wrong things, I should be caught, otherwise it would be privacy. So there is a good technological challenge to develop hierarchies of privacy so that somebody who does not care, I don't care, but there is something government cares, and so that's what, and the citizen fares, and so you get it as long as you are a legal transaction, kind of a thing. So it's a very big thing that has to happen if it has to succeed, kind of a thing.
Yeah, excellent. Kenichi, privacy?
Yeah, privacy, I just have a short comment. I think this is not really a CBDC issue, a little bigger issue, as you already listen here, for example, this morning, credential from academic credit, for example, digital verification system, so, and also some employment history and every privacy. Sometimes we really want to show to the next employers, as well as some of the private information you want to hide, obviously. But as an economist, everything can be a commodity and can be a market solution. So privacy, I always think about it as a karaoke system. If you're a songwriter, if you write a song, and if someone sings your song, you can get fee.
Yep.
That's the same thing. It should be the future, should be your privacy, should be stored somewhere. And then you can always set your classification system, how much that privacy will be used, and then whenever used somewhere, each of us should be able to collect fees from them. So that's actually a system we should set up sometime in the future, and that's just a link to everything, KYC or CBDC or academic credential. I think that's a kind of future, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's, the discussions we have with the central banks is very similar to your views. Is there's going to be a level of money transfer, buying coffees, €100 transfers, that you just need a wallet. You probably don't need any ID, you just need a phone and a wallet. Then if you want to transact, the next level, so €1,000, then you need to register your name or your ID card. And then if you want to be changing $10,000 or whatever it be, then there's a next level. It seems to be that sort of thinking is where it be, because you know, we're quite happy to move money just for paying for our local bills and things like that. So you know, it's a very interesting place to be, and it's a great discussion. Conscious of the time, so one of the questions that everybody asks me every single day is, when are we going to see CBDCs? Does anybody want the answer? So I'll give the same answer I give all the time, and then these guys are going to answer. So for the big economies, the UK, Japan, even India, although India is looking at launching something soon, you know, the EU zone, etc. This is going to be, my view, 3 to 5 years at least, because you're talking about, one, they have good systems already. So why do we need a CBDC? The benefits are less important to some of these economies. So they will do them, but they're going to wait and learn. And secondly is the scale. If you mess up the Japanese yen or the US dollar, it's probably a bit of a global crisis. So imagine you're a central banker trying to make this decision. You're going to wait till everyone else does something first. You've got millions, billions of people to make sure this works. So in my view, this is a 3 to 5 year for things to start. Now, smaller nations, Bhutan and Bahamas, some of the other ones, some European countries, non-EU, LATAM countries, I think you'll see those being live in the next 3 years rather than 3 to 5 years. So I think they're going to go first, the smaller countries who need this, and then the big ones will follow. What about your thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the main things I think many speakers already highlighted is what would be the design features have to be decided.
Yeah.
And what is the operating model? Is it only a central governance like the Reserve Bank? Or is it also franchise and operator can happen or the other, because it has to go into the length and breadth of the country kind of a thing or the other. It's very important kind of a thing or the other. And of course, as I mentioned, technology foundations is a very important aspect which should assure resilience. If you don't have resilience, then it becomes a big problem or the other. And that is where a big challenge is needed to assure what is the thing that happens or the other. And then finally, but not the least, the legal framework. Because in all these monetary principles, if you don't have legal frameworks, whether one can issue a currency or whether one can be legal, and all these things get into entangled and it becomes a problem. And these are some of the steps that has to happen. As you can see, it becomes a high-level political technology and also business, and all these things have to converge on some of the things before you can say that it will succeed kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Yes, as Antony said, I already said it's a tremendous demand in small developing countries like Cambodia, Bhutan, those places, and they don't have a good tech people, so the tech people need to help them definitely, and also they are competing with international currencies, US dollar. For the Cambodia case, before 2020, already 80% of the deposit is in US dollar, and transaction 80% more is in US dollar. So in these places, in de facto, they do have their local currencies. Of course, central bank want to promote their local currencies. That's where the CBDC comes in. At the moment, my survey says wholesale transaction, bank-to-bank transfer, a little bit successful, actually, replacing old technology. But the old technology itself is also owned by central bank anyway. And then the retail one, however, it's not so successful right now, because already there is a ABA Bank, biggest bank in Cambodia, which is owned by Canadian. It's a Canadian bank, actually. So these guys are more trusted than Central Bank of Cambodia. So that they're losing already. They cannot actually introduce this market, you know, by those guys. And also, design is important because somehow Cambodia Central Bank offered. I thought. Actually, before doing survey, I thought they offering in a local currency, Khmer Riel, but actually they are offering also in US dollar, which is so strange. Central bank offering US dollar stablecoin, which there's no information how to back that. So the economics professions design kind of voices should be also needed.
Yeah.
Whenever you tech guys helping those guys, please ask economic experts like me or other economic experts, make sure that makes sense also from economics point of view.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we're just running out of time, but I think that's the most important point, that, you know, the tech brains, the economists, the regulators and lawyers, you know, we saw a great discussion yesterday, they all need to work together, and that's why this is going to take a long time for the bigger economies, especially if you imagine the Fed, there's, you know, X number of states, I can't remember, in Fed Reserve banks, you know, and EU, there's 26 different countries. So this will take a while, and things like Cambodia, where they're doing their own currency and a US dollar, is probably not a good future. It probably need to change, and therefore the learning that the bigger banks are going to see that. So it's definitely a work in progress, but over the next few years. But we're out of time. It's flashing at me, and Lauren's going to come and run at me now. But thank you, Kenichi, and thank you, RK.